So if anybody wants to not be seen on YouTube, then you can switch your videos off. The agenda for today is fundamentally about the work which we've been doing in terms of cataloging and so on. So I will be describing that work, and we share the experiences that we have and also show you where we will go from where we are. A couple of things in terms of just housekeeping. First and foremost, during the presentations, at the time when we are speaking, we're happy to take questions, but what you need to do is you will need to put your questions into chat box. Our team will direct those questions to me during the presentations. After the presentation is over, I expect we'll have between half an hour and 40 minutes for general discussions. And when that happens, just raise your hand. You can raise your hand on Zoom by clicking on the reactions button, and that gives you a big button called raise hand. So you can do that. Lastly, we were expecting that by the time this webinar will happen, we will all be able to go back to our office and work from there. Unfortunately, that has not been possible. We're still in Udaipur in lockdown and working from home. So rather than show you the system live, what we have had to do is record videos from our computer system. So you will be seeing how the computer system works and different parts of it work, but you will not be seeing the real computer system. You'll be seeing videos of it. Why are we doing the work we're doing? I think, needless to say, particularly for this audience, everybody is fully familiar with the risk that India's ancient knowledge and lore have to being lost forever, because paper manuscripts have a defined life, and so do palm leaf manuscripts. So there is that need to conserve and preserve them in some way. And the second thing is that those manuscripts are today very, very inaccessible to scholars. Yes, the National Manuscript Mission has done some yeoman work in the recent past to image them, but in terms of cataloging, it is still very much a very, very simple catalog which they have done. And our goal is to produce a detailed digital descriptive catalog. So our goal overall is to catalog something like 25 lakh manuscripts. And while we're doing that, we also want to produce a very large corpus, a digital corpus of transcripts of these manuscripts. And we expect that out of the 25 lakh manuscripts that we will digitize and catalog, we will have some 5 lakhs, which are important manuscripts, or manuscripts which are not in Devanagari and therefore not easily accessible to scholars. So we will produce a digital catalog of 5 lakh manuscripts, which are, digital corpus of 5 lakh manuscripts, which are fully transcribed. So with that goal in mind, and this is a very, very ambitious goal, as anybody will tell you, we decided that the right approach for that would be to first do a pilot project and to see whether this thing was feasible in itself or not, and what problems could we get. So we started to work with the Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal in Pune. And the Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal has some 5,800, little more than 5,800 manuscripts. And it's a very interesting collection, because although the Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal is primarily to do with the Ved, they also have manuscripts from nearly all the subjects we can think of. So from grammar to Kavya to Alankar Shastra to Ayurveda to the epics, you name it, nearly all the subjects, Jyotish, all the subjects are represented there, but the collection is predominated or dominated by Ved. So that was the reason why we chose to work with the Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal. And while we're doing that, we're developing computer systems which will allow this work to happen at scale, at the scale at which we want it to happen. Now, we just didn't want to rush into this. We had to understand exactly what needed to be done. And we hope that in running this pilot program, we will throw up all the issues, all the problems, not just technical problems, but also training problems and understanding problems and all of that. So if we can identify those issues in the pilot, then we can be sure of being able to uh, achieve the bigger goal we have. So here is the way we see the overall work going on. So the first step for us is to acquire the images that are needed. This is followed by arranging all the images for a particular accession number, a unique identifier, in page order. Interestingly, we find that roughly 25%, 30% of the images that we get are not in page order. So putting them in page order and then producing a descriptive catalog. And once this descriptive catalog is produced, it will be published on the internet for users to access. Part of that, this is the overall goal of 25 lakhs. Part of that will then go into transcription, and the transcription is going to be linked to the images. So image linked transcription. So if you're looking for a word in the third line somewhere in the middle, and you look at that word on the digital corpus, you will also be able to see where it is in the image. And then that is what we mean by image linked transcription. And then publish that also for users to see. Now, the thing about this diagram is that it places the user on the extreme right. But for us, this is the most important person or constituency that we've designed the system for. So in everything that we have done, unlike many cataloging systems which have approached it from the point of view of making the job of the catalog editor easier, we have approached it from the point of view of making it, oops, Shivani, something's happened here. From the point of view of making the life of the user, the scholar who is searching our manuscripts, to make, I don't think they can see it.
Yes, they can.
Can you see the slide?
Yes, they can. I can see it.
Okay. So making the life of the users easier. And the fundamental thing about the user is they want a simple interface, they want a consistent interface. And that is what gave us our first goal. We need to work with very, very high standards of quality and consistency. Sure. Okay. So a word about quality and consistency. First, every manuscript needs to have a unique identifier like the Aadhaar card. And to us, the accession number that the library gives is the Aadhaar card. And if there is no accession number, or we can't trace a set of images to an accession number, then there is no point in cataloging them. Without images, we're doing no cataloging. And this remains a very, very important principle in our work, which is never mislead the user. We believe in not giving information rather than giving possibly incorrect information. The great rule of manuscriptology, be faithful to the manuscript, is a very important one. For instance, if we get a manuscript which says that this has been derived from the Skanda Puran, and then we look at the Skanda Puran and there is no reference to this particular thing, well, the Skanda Puran has so many recensions and so many readings that we just rely on the fact that the manuscript said it was derived from the Skanda Puran and say that in our descriptive catalog. Consistency is a very, very important property when it comes to computerized catalogs. And one notices that over time, if you look at descriptive catalogs from various institutions which have been produced, say from the 1920s and 30s to the 1980s, catalog editors just cannot be consistent in the use of terms and phrases and words to describe the same thing. And similarly, different editors have their own style, but with a computerized catalog, one needs to be completely consistent. Also, for every text, for the same text, one needs to have the same titles, whether it be the Samastapad, or whether it be the way it is spelt, or whether the name itself that is used, for things like titles and authors and so on and so forth, and subjects. if one looks at other big catalogs which have been published, the same text and there is only one may find that it has been classified under 3 different subjects. So consistency in those choices is important, and then minimize errors in entry of data. And the catalog editor is making a number of judgments as they go along. So how do we minimize these errors of judgment? All these things, as we come across them in real life, we just ask the simple question, how will the user look at it? And how will a search algorithm work on it? So whenever we're faced with manuscripts throw a lot of new things, every manuscript is different, as you're aware. So we've got to work with keeping that search principle front and center of what we do. So with that, I will take you then to the first step of our overall work plan, which is how do we acquire images? Now, in the case of the Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal, they have 15,863 manuscripts in their accession register. And they had been digitized, and digital images were available on 2 hard disks from them. When we received these hard disks, we found one of them was corrupted, couldn't be loaded, and we could only recover something like 45% of the images from that particular disk. There was no linkage between images and accession numbers, so we had to collect and organize them neatly, and so on and so forth. Overall, from this set of digital images which we got on hard disks, we had a recovery rate something in the region of 70%. And these numbers are important as we go along, because when data, one may think that we've digitized it and it's available on a hard disk, therefore it is saved forever. The short answer, it is not saved forever. If it is saved on optical media, well, in 5 years' time, the optical media will lose 25% of the data on it. So when digitized, the lifetime of the digital images is very, very limited. And therefore, particular care is needed to keep refreshing that data in some way. And that's one of the lessons we have learned when we looked at the digital images we got from Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal. The other thing we found is that VSM had 990 microfilm rolls, and we decided that we would digitize the images on the microfilm. And when we digitized the images on the microfilm, we found that, again, none of the images, 100% of the images of the palm leaf manuscripts were completely useless. We just couldn't use them. And even with paper manuscripts, something like between 1% and 2% were really poor quality or really badly blurred or not linked to an accession number. So we have nearly 90% of the way through the digitization of the microfilms. And between the two, there is an overlap. But after the microfilm rolls have been digitized, the overlap has been identified, we will then go to the library and do in-library imaging for what remains. There is no point in touching manuscripts and handling them unnecessarily. If we already have images, then we will not image them. We will only image the work, the remainder. So as the next step, I will show you a video which describes how we do the microfilm digitization. And Yogesh Paliwal from my team is giving the commentary here.
A microfilm reel is a collection of images on cellulite photographic film. In 1995, IGNC photographed a number of manuscripts at VSM and left them with 990 such reels. We needed a machine to convert the images on microfilm into digital image files. On the market, these cost between 2.5 to 7.5 million Indian rupees. Given this cost, we worked with engineers from Secure Meters to build our oven for just 250,000 Indian rupees. We put the microfilm roll into the machine and pass it between the light and the camera lens. As the take-up pull wind the film forward, we take a photo of each image. After imaging the wool reel, we rewind it onto the original spool and return it to its box. Most photographs in the microfilm show two pages of a manuscript, one above the other. A few have four pages in a single image. We then process the images so that one page in on one file. As we check the image for quality, we make corrections such as cropping, image rotation, and image enhancement till the image good enough for use. Sometimes wool reels or some images on a reel are too dark, blurry, or impossible to read. About 1% of the paper manuscript images and 100% of palm leaf manuscript images are not usable. If we can improve the quality enough, we use the image. If not, we reject. During the inspection, we can link each image to its accession number as well. Sometimes one accession number can span worth reels, and sometimes some reel can have images from up to 10 manuscripts. Occasionally, the accession number page is illegible, which forces us to reject the whole set following the page. So far, we have processed our 800 microfilm reels at the rate of 5 to 6 reels per day. After processing, the images are sent to the pagination team.
So that was Yogesh describing how we are dealing with the microfilm images and making a repository of digital images there. As I said, eventually we're going to be doing some in-library imaging, and our goal here is to produce a very cheap equipment rather than a conventional scanner or very expensive scanners. Very cheap equipment so that we can just give it away to libraries, and those libraries can then just digitize the images and put them up on their servers so that ongoing the work becomes easy. So our goal is to make this equipment for 25,000 rupees. And Rajshri Godawat, who works in our IT team, will now describe how we're approaching it using just simple mobile phone technology.
Sanjay is that part of our overall system that gathers manuscript images and places them in page order. One important part of this is in library digital imaging of manuscripts. An Android smartphone is mounted on a stand which also provides the studio lighting for the manuscript pages. Once on the stand, the operator fires the camera by a handheld switch. Once the images have been captured, they are directly securely uploaded to the designated file server and cleared from the phone. Operator logs into the application. After successful login, he sees a dashboard where he gets to see how many images the camera can hold, the list and count of manuscripts already scanned and uploaded, and scanned but pending to be uploaded. Operator enters the library UID and the server validates that this phone is designated to work at that library only. Once the library is verified, imaging can begin. The manuscript accession number is the most important entry because an error in identification will result in misidentification. The operator is asked to enter manuscript UID twice to ensure there are no errors. He also records manuscript dimensions, length and breadth of a manuscript page, then places the camera on its stand. He can then adjust the height of the stand to get full screen coverage and alignment with the manuscript. Once the setup is done, the operator takes the test image to check the image quality. Once the test image is good, image production can be started. The operator must carefully place the manuscript pages under the camera, trigger image capture, and then remove them without changing the original order. The images are named in the sequence in which they are shot and stored on the camera. When all the pages have been imaged, the operator removes the phone from the stand and marks the completion of manuscript. The phone connects to the designated server and starts to transfer the captured images. This image upload works as a background process. The operator can then start with the next manuscript.
So again, here the goal is to find simple solutions, and with modern day mobile phones, you get some excellent cameras. So the goal that we have of acquiring high quality images can be met with a simple 15,000, 18,000 rupee device. The other thing is that this is technology which can be used by anybody. Everybody is these days familiar with a mobile phone. So putting it into libraries and making it easy for them to use is an important step. So having acquired the images in this way, the next step for us is to arrange the images for an accession number in the right page order. Now, we've already seen how we go from the three sources of images to an image repository. The next step is to take that image repository and turn it into what we call our images database. And here one first begins by choosing, because we've got an overlap between microfilm images and digital images, which image or which set of images will be taken forward. So based on the overlap report, an accession number is selected and which set of images will be used for it. And then it's assigned to a page sequencing operator who then arranges the images in the right page order. In so doing, sometimes they identify images which don't really belong to this manuscript, and they are the orphan pages which have been imaged with this particular accession number. And then attach attributes of a page to that, and in that process of arranging things in the right page order, identify which pages are missing. And once that is done, these images are transferred to our images database. Shivani Goswami, who does this work for us, she has made the video of her work.
We believe that when our system delivers a manuscript to a user, it must be in the correct page order. We perform the page sequencing operation on the raw image repository, and it achieves three key objectives. First, it allows us to associate specific properties of a page with its image. Second, it organizes all images in the right order and thus identifies any missing pages. And third, it assigns each image a unique identifier. When I do this work, I am presented the manuscript images in their original sequence on the screen. If the images are out of sequence, I place the correct number sequentially against each image. As the correct sequence is entered, I can click the Arrange button and I can see the images ordered in the sequence that I had entered. This process also automatically identifies any missing pages. Properties of a page, such as it being a cover page, start or end of the text, colophon page, illustrated page, etc., can be associated with the image. This data will be useful to the users when viewing the search results. If the page has specific attributes, then I select these attributes from a list of attributes. Once I am satisfied that the sequencing is correct, pressing the Submit button renames each file uniquely in the right sequence, and these images are moved to the image database. All the metadata developed in this operation is stored in the image database and is available to the catalog editors in the next step.
So this is how the images database is created. This images database now has all the images of a particular accession number under that accession number, uniquely named. No other image will have the same name and will be used in the next step as we go forward to making the descriptive catalogs. And that is the third step, making the descriptive catalogs. Now, as we had said, that in all this work, high standards of quality and consistency are necessary. This is assured by the fact that we use something we call lexicons. Lexicons are standard terminology that we will use always when we're doing some cataloging, particularly in the critical fields of the descriptive catalog. So we effectively have 6 lexicons. One relates to subjects, the other relates to keywords, the third relates to persons, that includes authors and commentators. The fourth relates to places, and this is not very commonly used, but it avoids the confusion between Banaras, Varanasi, and Kashi. And the most important one is the titles lexicon. And the titles lexicon is what brings the title of a text and all these other things together in one place. And last but not the least is the libraries database, which gives the essential data about every library who will eventually subscribe to this service. All the lexicons, one of the important roles of a lexicon is to provide synonyms and aliases and variant spellings for whatever entries we have. Apart from lexicons, we use a list of values, in the sense they are drop-down menus when one is filling up a field. And so these two things together assure consistent use between editors and over time. Lexicons, we make sure are very well referenced and only include valid information. And if there is things like something is ascribed in authorship to XYZ, then we can make sure that we are not noting that name as the author, but we are writing it somewhere else in the entry to say ascribed to. Similarly, because we're picking values from drop-down menus, there are no typographic errors. And the most interesting thing is when some things change and new information about a text or about a person gets known, all we need to do is change the lexicon. We don't have to revisit the catalog entries. Because we're using aliases and variant spellings, the search responsiveness is much faster and search speed is also much faster. So this is again the user coming front and center. You don't want to wait for minutes to find the results you're looking for. You want them in a very, very quick time. So the process of making a lexicon is very simple. Once there is a need that, okay, I need a lexicon entry for a particular author or a text and so on, it begins by researching that thoroughly. Having done that, the next step is to produce all the possible variants and aliases that we know about, including variant spellings. So the breaking of the samastapad and anunasik versus anuswar, that kind of thing. And once all of that is done, you complete the entry and submit it for peer review. Peer review is, of course, done by our own staff. So if person A has done this work, then they may ask B or C to review it. And if it is not okay, then it comes back to whoever produced the entry. And once it is finished, it goes off as the finished lexicon entry in the respective lexicon. This work from start to finish is completely tracked both in terms of time and persons. So who did the research, who made the entry, who did the peer review, what were the comments that were made during the peer review process. All of that is recorded on the computer system and saved for posterity. Pankaj Sharma will now describe the lexicons themselves.
As was explained in the presentation, lexicons are the cornerstone for catalog quality and consistency. They also help speed up searching the catalog database. We have 5 lexicons, and I shall be talking about 4 of them using the Panchadashi example. The subject's lexicon is a complete hierarchical division of Sanskrit literature. A number of authorities have given various proposals about the classification of Sanskrit literature into subject categories, and different catalogs, past and present, have used different systems. Our subject classification is divided into 22 top level subjects. We call them level 0 subjects. Each subject may further subdivided further. The lowest level of subdivision is level 4, while some level 0 subjects have no further divisions. Panchadashi is a darshan text and specifically an Advaita text. Keywords are a tool to help a user search for relevant texts. These words may apply across different subjects or may be useful within one subject only. Panchadashi has 15 chapters and is a big text. Its manuscripts are frequently found with 1 or 2 chapters only. Each chapter title was therefore created as a keyword and can thus be used as a search term. Our person's lexicon covers authors and commentators. The lexicon identifies persons uniquely, including people with identical names. Each entry is well researched and includes the references based on which the author was uniquely identified. All lexicons, including the person's lexicon, gives aliases and alternative spellings so that most forms of search terms entered by a user will get a valid result. Our titles lexicon, like the person's lexicon, is well researched and covers the titles of Sanskrit works. The titles lexicon establishes the link between a title and its subject, keywords, author, commentator, and parent text as applicable. Thus, the title entry for a commentary will identify its parent text. We also make a basic effort to establish whether a text has been published, and if it is, we enter a title under the Kriti field. Lexicons are a powerful aid to both cataloging and to database search. They are a one-time effort, but once done correctly, a single lexical entry can be used for a large number of manuscripts.
So Pankaj talked about the speed, the creation of the lexicons and the research that goes on in the background. One set of books that we found extremely useful for our referencing work was the new Catalogus Catalogorum published by the University of Madras over the last 30 odd years, 35 years. Because it is such a central thing for us, we have automated a lot of the NCC. And Anil Kumar, who's done a lot of the work, will now talk you through how the search tools we have.
The new Catalogus Catalogorum, NCC for short, is well-known manuscriptology resource. Although still incomplete, its published 39 volumes are an invaluable reference for us when we make our lexicons. The creation and use of lexicons will be explained later. I will show you an IT tool we have made for searching the NCC. Initially, we used a tool that allowed users to view the relevant pages of an entry in PDF form. This was an obvious improvement over paper, but still data heavy and slow. We have developed a search tool after the digitization of 39 volumes after for NCC that is both quick and suited for the referencing work we do. All NCC headwords are in Devanagari and the initial search is performed on a headword. After 3 characters have been typed, possible entries results for that phrase. One can restrict the number by typing the whole search string or select the required headword from the list. Here I have shown how the headword Panchadasa resulted in many results that included the one that is relevant to us. From the data displayed in the headword search, it is possible to double-click on the romanized text of the words in the entry and reach the Devanagari headword for that text. The author of Panchadasi is Vidyaranya. Double-click on that and the results are shown in the next column. Since there may be digitization error in the text, The user also has the option to view the exact page of the paper copy directly from these screens. For most lexicon entries, this data is sufficient, but occasionally one need to look deeper into an entry. Double-clicking further will open a third column and show more data if required. We are doing an extensive cleanup of the data that we have digitized. Once this is finished, we shall publish this tool on our website.
So producing of lexicons and doing the referencing work, particularly with the NCC, which is a very, very good starting point. Unfortunately, it is still incomplete. Entries after Suhodit are not available, but one hopes that the Madras University will at some stage publish them. And once they do, we will obviously add it to this work. This then brings us to the most interesting and important part of what we do, which is making of the descriptive catalog entries. The process here is begins with things which we already have produced and see how they're produced, the libraries data, the images data, and the lexicons. And this piece in the middle is what the catalog editor has to do. The library data and the image data are auto-linked when it comes to the catalog editor. And as they make the data entry into Sangraha, and we call the catalog, our descriptive catalog, we call the Sangraha. As they make that entry, what they have to do is select and link data from the lexicons. They have to enter some data manually. And once the entry is complete, they can then send it for peer review, have that iterative loop in case it's not okay. And once it is okay, then it can go into Sangraha, the descriptive catalog. This work also, from here to the very end, is controlled and trackable and traceable by the workflow system which we have built. We can trace who made the entry, when did they make it, and who were the peers, and so on and so forth. Ashwini Lanke will now describe the cataloging process.
As was explained,
Catalog data entry links pre-existing data from the digitized printed catalogs and accession register of VSMP, the images database, and the lexicons. I will take you through an example of a manuscript of Panchadashi, accession number VSM 14786. We work on a workstation that has two screens, one where we can view and scroll through the manuscript images, and a second where we can enter the catalog data. The catalog data is divided into different sections, and we begin with the start of the process. As soon as I enter an accession number, all pre-existing data from the accession register, printed catalogs, and the image database is automatically filled as a guide to me. The most important choice I make is the manuscript title. The title in the printed catalog is Panchadashi Satik. The first page of the manuscript says the title is Padadipika. Seeing that the manuscript contains Panchadashi with its commentary Tatparya Bodhini, select the given title from the lexicon as Panchadashi Tatparya Bodhini Cha. Since both the root and the commentary is published, the same lexicon entry is selected for the Kriti. As soon as I choose these two fields, the subject, keywords, author, and the commentator are automatically populated. As you can see, so far I have typed nothing except the title given in the manuscript. Reading the manuscript, I find it has only 6 chapters, so I have to manually edit the keywords to remove some chapter names. I go through the other fields and select the respective entries from the drop-down items given by the system. I found a scribe name in the colophon, so I type that in and give the image number on which I found that data. This makes the job of the peer reviewer easier. They need to see only this image to verify my typing. The next section relates to the physical data of the manuscript. I have not seen the manuscript, so I rely solely on what I can see in the image and what was given in the catalog. Each of these fields is again filled by selecting the appropriate values from drop-down menus. The 14 lines per page and 39 letters per line is pre-filled in this case. I quickly check it from the images. Going through the manuscript, I can see there are many handwritings, so I choose the appropriate entry. The catalog says there are 103 folios in this manuscript and I have 206 images, so I leave these entries untouched. In the next section, we have to provide the properties of images. Some of the data about images was generated at the page sequencing stage and it is already populated for me. The most important data here relates to the missing pages. In this case, there are none. The historical data section relates to the dates and places for the manuscript. I find the colophon gives a complete date, so I record those in Prathamanta Sanskrit in descending order, year to day. The Christian year is a searchable field, is filled in and to validate the year CE. As the scribe did not mention the place of writing, I choose unknown from Dropbox. Since the manuscript has only 6 out of 15 chapters of Panchadashi, I type the names of the chapters available in the manuscript here. The last set of entries are transcriptions of important pages. The manuscript does not have a cover page and it has a blank flyleaf. Since we plan to show the first and last pages of manuscripts with more than 100 pages, the begin and end text too do not need to be transcribed. I can see the colophons on one screen and I carefully transcribe them exactly as they appear in the manuscript. This catalog field acknowledges the name of the donor who is supporting this work. At present, there is only one, so I select Secure Meters. After filling all the fields properly, I must check them all once again and mark the work done as complete. I then choose 2 of my colleagues as reviewers and submit the catalog entry for review. In case they find errors, the work will come back to me for corrections. Once the entry is perfect, the entry is sent to be publishable catalog.
So having Ashwini's explained how a catalog entry is produced, we will now go on and look at a few finished catalog entries. This
You
time
have
it's
heard
my voice.
my colleagues describe their work on imaging, page sequencing, creating lexicons, and making catalog entries. I will now show you some examples of the results of all these efforts. I have brought up the catalog entry for accession number 5579, which is a Panchadashi manuscript. Here, the manuscript cover page showed the title as Tattva Viveka Prathamodhyaya, while the flyleaf showed the title as Panchadashi. The title was correctly identified as Panchadashi. The field called Given Title in the catalog was linked to the entry for Panchadashi in the title's lexicon. By picking this title, the author, subject, and keywords were directly suggested to the editor and populated in the catalog entry. I had mentioned earlier that we are cataloging images of manuscripts and not manuscripts themselves. In fact, our catalog editors will never see the physical object. Therefore, making comments about the physical aspects of a manuscript other than what has been gleaned from an image would be misleading to the user. We therefore rely on the data published in the paper catalogs for physical data and validate any physical data that we can from the image. However, we do provide extensive useful information on the quality of the images themselves. Identifying recto verso of a folio is frequently impossible because the images we get are cropped at the edges. Thus, page numbers and not folio numbers become important in our work. Most scholars will search for manuscripts of their interest either using titles, author names, subjects, or keywords. Our system must therefore deliver the correct results based on these parameters. Therefore, consistency amongst these four search fields is critical, and the use of lexicons eliminates typing errors and ensures consistency between editors and over time. Thereafter, the user may want to filter the results, for example, for complete manuscripts only, or for manuscripts written in a certain period, or any other data fields that are available in the catalog to narrow their search. Again, using drop-down boxes helps us remain consistent. When the base text and a named commentary on that text are both found in a manuscript, we choose a title that will allow a search query to find either of the two titles. The commentary is linked to the parent text in the lexicon, and the commentator's name is automatically picked up from the lexicon entry of the commentary. Going forward, we propose to include a number of different output formats for the catalog entry of a manuscript, which might be used to serve different purposes. For example, a thumbnail view will be available in the search process. A complete view, as I have shown, will be available for the user on screen. If the library decides to publish a descriptive catalog in book form, a Bori style of descriptive catalog output can also be provided. A reference view, useful for bibliographic citations in a thesis, may also be found useful.
So that completes the story for how we are producing descriptive catalog entries. Work of this size and scope that we've set for ourselves cannot happen without a strong management system behind it. So we have a management system which allows us to manage the workload on each catalog editor. Everybody must be busy, nobody must be idle, but nobody should be overloaded. Something which also identifies where are the quality issues, what is proving difficult, why are mistakes or errors being made. And lastly, how is the project going? We've also got to think of it from the point of view of the library we're working with. So for them, what is the percentage completion of various steps? So with these three main things in mind, we, oops, I pressed escape. With these three things in mind, we will now talk you through the management system. And again, I'm doing the talking here.
A large-scale cataloging process needs a strong management system to support it. At present, the role of managing the process sits with me, and effectively, I will describe my contribution to the team in this section. There are four key jobs: managing users and what they can and can't do in the system, controlling the list of values used as drop-down menus in catalog editing, managing each person's workload, and last but not least, managing the quality of the work being done. Each person working with us has a clearly defined role, and that defines what they can and can't change in the computer system. Thus, Ashwini has the role as a reviewer, and like all reviewers, for example, she can edit catalog entries but not delete them, but she cannot add or edit values in the drop-down list. Controlling the drop-down menus that catalog editors use when making descriptive entries is essential in managing the complexity in cataloging. For example, there are 6 terms that describe the presence or absence of margins in a manuscript. Any request for new terms is carefully considered before I end up adding them to the list. I also manage the workload for each catalog editor and assign manuscripts appropriate to their individual skills. I can see the current workload with each person at the click of a button. Similarly, I can see the number of reviews that are pending with each person. Based on these views, something I do every morning, I can either assign more work or chase up things like reviews. I also assign manuscripts to catalog editors. Once an editor is running low on assigned work, I will assign them more work. This involves selecting manuscripts appropriate for the skills of the editor. To help with the process, I can see all the manuscripts that have been paginated and are awaiting cataloging. For a manuscript such as Tithi Chintamani, I can see its title and important images. Before I can decide that this is a Jyotish manuscript and is best assigned to Divya, who is our Jyotish expert. That process is actually fairly easy and is at the end at the click of a button. The management system also easily allows the reassignment of work when needed. It was recently in play when, due to the prolonged absence of one of our team due to COVID, when it became clear that she would be absent for a long time, I could easily reassign all her reviews to the other editors. A study of the reviewer's remarks gives me a very good insight into the quality issues in the lexicon making and the cataloging work. Reviewers spot errors and make constructive suggestions on what needs correcting, and the original editor must make the corrections. When necessary, I am able to add my remarks and notes to the entry and join the debate if the remarks have started one. I can also summarize all the reviewer's remarks over a period of, say, a month or a week, and then look at the common errors. Such an analysis helps me to continuously improve the quality of work we do.
Okay, so there's the overall management system.
You are mute, sir.
Please unmute, sir.
Right, can I be heard now?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the management system that overlays all the catalog editing work that needs to be done. So let's come back to the overall work plan. We have been through here. We have seen how the descriptive catalogs are made. We now need to get to the publishing stage. We aren't there at the publishing stage yet. And that is for 2 or 3 reasons. One is we have designed the search interfaces that we want and how users will see the search results and so on and so forth. And we are in the process of coding for them. We're exploring an interesting area which is known as disambiguation, which is if, say, somebody is searching for as a subject Jyotish. Now, is it Vedic Jyotish or is it Laukik Jyotish? Because these two subjects occur in both main subjects of Ved and Jyotish itself. So it is useful for the user to know and disambiguate their search. And of course, we want to launch it, and we actually want to physically launch it with an event in Pune if possible, and that is very much dependent on COVID. So we're hoping that we will be able to do the launch, but we can do all the computing work can happen as soon as we know we have a launch date. It's one of those things which is fairly straightforward and easy to do. The second thing which we've got to work on is the image linked transcription. And on the image linked transcription, we are further behind compared to search. We are exploring various design alternatives, but the most important thing we're doing in exploring these alternatives is we're also exploring artificial intelligence tools and algorithms to help with this overall process. So I'll let Shreyans's video to play. And Shreyans is working on this stuff, and he will describe how we
We plan to use artificial intelligence techniques to solve a number of different problems, from the mundane task of counting the number of lines on a page through text-image alignment and ultimately to machine transcription of manuscripts. We are in the experimental stage with this technology. We have achieved some encouraging results. Initially, we did OCR work on the 39 volumes of the NCC, and that success has led us to line and character counting problem. Automating this will save time for catalog editors. Our starting point is the digital image from the image database, and our goal is to count the number of lines on the image and the number of characters on each line. The first step in this process is to convert the initial image to black and white and reduce the noises in the image. The black and white image is then processed using the AI algorithms for line and character counting. We can then show the lines on the color images. Similarly, character outlines are detected on the black and white image and then be plotted on the color images. For line and character counting, we do not need to plot the outlines. However, the plotting function will be used in transcription where we need text-image alignment.
Well, that's an insight into the AI work that we have started to do. And it sort of brings me to an end of, how far we have got with the work that we're doing as a part of our pilot project. So what has been our experience in doing this work? The first and the most important thing we've got to talk about is quality. And in terms of the quality of work, we found that peer reviews are an absolutely essential part of what we do. They have helped us prevent a lot of errors. And interestingly, more than 60% of the errors we're finding are in transcription. There are very, very few errors of judgment. They're there, but they're less than 1%. So 60% of the errors lie in transcription. In terms of our own capabilities and the capability of our team, we find we lack the capabilities for Shraut, and we're looking to add capabilities in that area. Adding capabilities means recruitment, and unfortunately, recruitment is proving to be more difficult than I would have thought. But primarily that is, there is an inadequate response from good quality people. And secondly, because of COVID-related difficulties, we're not able to have a proper interview, a sakshatkar. Virtual interviews are no good. The biggest issue we face is that each manuscript is different. And when we're wanting to develop a computer system, we have to somehow figure out a way of fitting all this variability within what should be inherently a simple computer system. So the variability leads towards complexity, but the fact that we want to scale and do this work on scale, we need simple systems. Simplicity because we need to have catalog editors who can be trained very quickly and can become productive very quickly. So this is the core challenge. How do you deal with the complexity within manuscripts and yet keep systems and operating procedures simple? So we've been dealing with this, and I think we've been pretty successful in what we've done. But for instance, it has led to a constant evolution of A, our operating procedures, and B, also of the IT systems. The operating procedures, which is what guides the catalog editors and the staff, are now very well documented, and we are now making them even more user accessible by adding examples and things like that. What we have found is it takes about 2 weeks to train somebody who's never done this work to begin to do this work correctly. As soon as they realize that diligence is the most important attribute here, they start to become productive. And of course, speed and quality can be developed fairly quickly with a little bit of practice. Our view is that in 6 months, and that is all it will take with this system, it would take 6 months to go from being a complete novice to being very competent in the cataloging process. Overall, I've described to you the various processes that we're running, and I think they're running well. We don't seem to have too many problems or too many issues with them. Like with all processes, further improvements are possible. And yes, we are planning to do further improvements. In fact, for our the core catalog editing section, we're planning a complete relaunch based on the experience that we've had so far. The next steps for us are obviously in-library imaging, which we've got to start in Pune. I'm hoping that COVID will allow us to go there by August 2021. Why August? Simply because we haven't finished the microfilm digitization yet. We are probably somewhere in the 830, 840 reels done, 160 to do. So that should be another month, month and a half. We will then have the short list of what we want to go and image. Around the same time, the equipment will also be ready. And around the same time, I pray to God that COVID also will be done and we will be able to travel. In terms of capability, we are looking for senior Ved and Shrout experts, primarily to help us and also to train the team we already have, and that will help us enhance our capability. Thankfully, we've just hired somebody to come and work with us on a part-time basis, rather not come and work with us, work from wherever they are working to help us with this process. The search system that I talked about, this is something which we need to do before the launch. Thankfully, in 2019 in Pune, in July, we'd held a workshop with certain scholars on what should the search system be. So we've had very, very good user feedback, and so we have a completed design. We have to just code and finish that. The catalog launch, as I said, depends on our ability to go to Pune and have a launch event. Even the image link transcription system, I expect will be ready by the end of this year, and we will begin the transcription work. An important step before we begin that work is to identify which are the important manuscripts to transcribe. There are only 9 Grantha manuscripts, only 9 manuscripts which are not in Devanagari at Vaidik Sanshodhan Mandal, and there are 9 of them in Grantha. So we will obviously begin with those, but what are the other important manuscripts that need to be transcribed? We need to identify those. You've seen the lexicon system and what we've done with the referencing of the NCC. We are pretty sure that we will be able to automate our lexicon making also, because the knowledge creation and the reference creation is now very, very substantially automated. So how do we pick up data from relevant parts of the NCC and put them into our lexicons? Or if we're doing other referencing, then, so this should take care of roughly 70% of the workload in making lexicons. And then in terms of the NCC digital search, something which Anil showed you, we plan to publish that on our website so that users at large, users outside who use the NCC for referencing and for looking for manuscripts can find it useful. So one important point which I need to make from all our experience is that no computer system on earth will solve 100% of the problems of cataloging and descriptive cataloging of manuscripts. But computer systems which solve 80–90% of the problems are easy to do. And one can then rely on manual systems to deal with those pieces which are not possible to be managed that way. So to just give you a simple example, we have chosen a very simple 20,000 rupee solution for digital imaging of manuscripts. More than 90% of the manuscripts are loose leaf bound. Even though they are bound like through a thread in the middle, they can still be opened flat. And therefore, a simple solution for 90%, 95% of the manuscripts can be done for 20,000 rupees. For the remaining 5%, yes, you need expensive equipment and so on. But let's solve the big picture problem. Then we can deal with proper experience with the small picture problem. So as I said, that when they did the imaging for the IGNCA microfilms, what they produced out of palm leaf manuscripts is completely unreadable. Once we start to use our imaging system for palm leaf manuscripts, we will learn. And if what we plan today is inadequate, we'll put in a second system, a more expensive system. But that we need to deploy only for a very few such examples. So that's been pretty much our approach. Let us solve those problems which apply to most of the things that we come across. And then we will see how we deal with the detailed with other methods which are still controlled and which still deliver the quality we want. So these are the next steps for the pilot. And what is the bigger picture? The bigger picture for us is obviously the 25 lakh digital catalog and 5 lakh transcribed corpus. For that, we need to build a team up to 200 people. Now, building that team up to 200 people needs both funding as well as people. And at the moment, we have challenges on the people front more than we have in the funding front. Today, we have funding of roughly 2 crores per year available, and we're not able to spend it. That funding will comfortably support 30 editors and the support team that is needed for pagination and imaging and so on and so forth. But today, our team is only 5. Once we are sure we're free from COVID, we know that this system is useful for scholars. Once we get, and we've launched it, and once we can prove to ourselves that we can expand and scale without dropping quality, then I'm confident we can go out and raise funds further. So turning that amount to 6 times that amount, I don't feel is going to be hard, because I come from an industry background. This funding, 2 crores per year, is coming from my family. But there are many industrialists like myself who want to support this work and have indicated, once I dedicated 100% onto this work, and socially when I met them, I've said, this is what I'm doing. So they said, well, how can we help? So I'm pretty confident that we could turn this amount to 6 times that, and that's about what we will need to support 200 people. one of the things that came back to us was, look, if we're going to give you a donation, we need a return by way of publicity. So you saw how we have built in the logo of the company which is supporting us. We built that into the catalog. This is an acknowledgement of whatever help we get from other people. So to me, the big problem is not the funding. The big problem is finding the people who are willing and able to do this work. One way we think we can make it easy is to get to a situation where people can work from anywhere, which basically means, if you belong to Gokarn, for instance, you could work from Gokarn. As I said, it takes 2 weeks to train and 6 weeks to competence. So come and spend 6 months with us and then go back to Gokarn and work from there. There are some technical issues. The most important one there being that, when people are handling a library's images, then we don't want the images to be stolen. We don't want them to be put on the internet. The library may want to sell them. They may want to charge people for it. So how do we protect the confidentiality of the data and the commitment that we have with libraries that, the images are the property of the library and they're not misused by our own staff? So that's one of the issues which we've got to deal with. We're working on this. And we've also got to look at the productivity and quality issues on how remote staff can be managed. COVID has helped a little bit, but also has hindered a lot. So using that learning experience, and we're hoping that if we can get to a point where people can work from anywhere, then some of this recruitment problem may be solved. So for the bigger picture, those are the two big steps. And of course, once we're done with Vaidik Sanshothan Mandal, then we've got to add more and more libraries to this work. So that's basically what I had to say. And at this point in time, I'm happy to open the house for people who want to, all our guests and visitors to raise their hand and take the floor. Our team will let you in and put the spotlight on you. So Professor Jha from the NMM, you want to say something?
Yeah. Thank you for this excellent presentation, sir. I think it's a unique project. You started with the issues of the digital preservation, and that is the major concern. So when we are planning such projects, it is necessary that the digital preservation techniques must be taken care of. And you also planned side by side the trusted digital repository system. We had this chance to develop a TDR for the Ministry of Culture's another project called National Cultural Audiovisual Archives, and that has been awarded as the world's first ISO certified trusted digital repository. Worldwide today, we have only 2 trusted digital repositories. That is, one is the National Mission for National Cultural Audiovisual Archives project. Another one is of the GovInfo project of the Publishing Office of the United States of America. So only 2 trusted digital archives are there. There is a need that it should be developed many more trusted digital repository so that a network or a grid of trusted digital repositories can be formed to save whatever the data we are generating today, what we have in the legacy, so that for the future generation, we can pass it safely. So that is the very, very important aspect which you have talked of. And another issue is that when you are using the microfilm rolls and then taking the digitized images from the microfilm rolls, I suggest that you take the illustrated manuscripts from the original, because that converts the data into black and white. So most of the microfilms is available in the black and white only. So at least the tantric manuscripts, wherever there is the color is a major component of the content itself. I think it is necessary that you take it from the original manuscripts. And thirdly, that like we have developed the trusted digital repository for the audiovisual collections of the government of India, that is the 12th Five-Year Plan project. We are also planning, since last couple of years, I'm looking the NMM, although I don't have much expertise in that area, but they make the processes on a workflow and whatever the digitization has, the NMM has done it, to make it a trusted digital repository to preserve that data. That's also in the pipeline. So I think there are a lot of common area and we can discuss together and we can further improve upon. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jha. I think, we haven't met, but something which I've been very keen to do. I think there is an important role for us in the non-profit sector to play with the work which you are doing with the Government of India. Just a little word on illustrated manuscripts. We are planning to have a separate image repository for art historians, and for illustrated manuscripts, the imaging process is going to be quite different. Dr. Girishnath Jha from JNU, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Great initiative, certainly. I remember when you had come to discuss the initial proposal, and I was delighted to see this initiative from industry coming up. So all the best, right? So, the presentation was quite elaborate and detailed. I have some questions and basically curiosity, how do you plan to do this? The first and foremost is that somewhere I saw a division of categories in Sanskrit literature, and you had individual texts like Ramayana, Mahabharata, Gita as a category. There are, of course, standard categorization methods in Sanskrit literature, whether you go by the classical methods in Sanskrit literature categories or the modern library science methodology. All of them are very well established. For example, library science has 18 domains and each domain has subdomains. You can very well base your metadata accordingly. Or you go by the Sanskrit literature classification, Vedic, Lokik, and like that, and do it. Because once you create the meta systems in your database, it will be very difficult to go back and change it later on. I don't know what stage are you in the system. If you have already entered a lot of data, which looks like, then it might be difficult to go back and change basic structure. There was one question. The second, you basically were giving us an idea how you order the pages, from the manuscript images, because manuscript images will be sent and received not in a fixed order, and then you decide manually, basically looking at the images and then assigning the pages again and again. I was wondering if it could be partially automated. You have an AI person who's doing it. Perhaps you can also look at the timestamp on the images. If images were shot in certain sequence, that can perhaps also help, because manually it will be a humongous task, because each manuscript will have multiple folios, and there might be missing text in each folio. So from a manuscript folio where the text is missing, it will be very difficult to guess the page, unless you have a very well-renowned and expert in the field who can actually predict that this might be where this might be positioned in the whole manuscript. It might be very, very difficult. Another, now the transcription part, I'm sure you would have experts in each area, like you have someone in Jyotisha and some in other areas. So you would be transcribing the manuscripts nicely, but the difficulty is if the text is missing, how do you reconstruct the text first and then transcribe? And secondly, if the manuscripts have shastraik illustrations, like, for example, in a Rasayan Sar manuscript, there might be the image of an oven, and the illustrated image of oven. So do you have some way of transcribing that also, or you just taking the image as it is? That's another question. One more, I have several actually, I was noting down while you were making a presentation. Now, high quality images is a good idea, because when you get images from either you obtain images from the Vedic Sanshrodhan Mandal by converting digital from the microfilm, this age-old technique, and then there might be other ways to acquire images. So there's no guarantee that the images will be of, a kind of tolerable quality. So how do you upscale the quality of the image? And if you do promise a very high quality image, certainly there will be problems of storage. You need more storage, and if you deliver those images on mobile platform, the bandwidth again is going to be a huge issue. Right? Now, when I was having a student who did a PhD on scientific cataloging, online scientific cataloging, we realized that not all catalogs have the same metadata structure. They're very, very different, right? And there are missing information in many of the catalogs. For example, domain information will be missing, subdomain, and somewhere there might be email of the person to contact, somewhere they may not be there. So a lot of other also script, which script is there, which language is there, name of the author, date, etc. A lot of things are missing. How do you, when you are entering data into your system, you must be ending up with a lot of empty fields. And if that empty field is a critical empty field, right? Say very important data field, how do you then handle that? Because that's going to affect your search.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
We've got a lot of other people also raising their hands. I think what we can do is, let me just deal with these 5 questions, and then further you and I will just have a one-to-one, because this is extremely valuable what you're saying.
I just have one more question, and then I'll be done. Right?
Go ahead.
Now, regarding the enhancing the user experience for search, right now you have mostly, I would say, textual search. So you have to perhaps make it multilingual, multiscriptal, and also somehow speech somewhere has to come. For that, you may consider image to sound technology somewhere. Yeah, please.
Okay, so in terms of subject classification, we looked at a whole raft of methods, and they are well-published methods. But when you start to look at search results, and if one starts to search for Itihas, then the number of results one is going to get in Itihas, where you're looking at Mahabharata and Ramayana, and Gita as a part of Mahabharata and Ramayana, you will probably end up with hundreds of thousands of manuscripts. And to filter from them down is not going to be trivial. So Itihas can vector to Mahabharata and Ramayana if needed. We've therefore chosen very carefully in terms of also what is it that we're going to get. So in a library, if there were literally all the 25 lakh manuscripts, then the Itihas section would probably be a whole room. And that's how do you then search for a particular or 10 particular manuscripts? And therefore, we've been guided a little bit by that. We've also referenced extensively on what has been done by other libraries and what has been published. What we did find is that places like, that's one thing. In terms of automating pagination, thankfully, roughly 75% of the work is already done for us, because scribes in 75% of the manuscripts either write shlok numbers or they write folio numbers. So 75% of the manuscripts are easy to paginate. They are out of sequence, not only because the images were shot out of sequence, but also they were originally kept also out of sequence in the library. So the paper or the palm leaves were assembled incorrectly. So that's another reason why we get a problem. The third, as I said, also mentioned that other manuscripts pages have got mixed up with this, so we get orphan pages. So what is an orphan in manuscript number 1 may be a missing page in our manuscript number 932. We don't know. So obviously, at the moment, our experience is that pagination works a lot faster than cataloging. And with fewer people, we're able to effectively do pagination. So it is not the focus of our automation yet, but I'm sure if need be, one can apply automation techniques. In terms of missing text and the need to reconstruct text, that is completely against our dharma. Our dharma is to be faithful to the manuscript. And if termites have eaten a hole which is 1.5 inches by 3 inches, and that means that we can't read 2 lines and 6 letters, even though we know that this is the shlok from the Gita, we are only going to leave a shirorekha. We are not going to fill in the text. because that we think is the scholar's domain. That is not our domain. And there are a number of reasons why you can't read everything. But that dharma to us is inviolable. We are not in the business of reconstructing text, scholars are. We are in the business of faithfully transcribing what is in the manuscript. That is what our key role is. In terms of storage and delivery, you're absolutely right that there is a huge compromise to be made in terms of how you store and therefore the data you need, and how you deliver and therefore the bandwidth you need. For most scholarly purposes, and I'm excluding here art history, but for most Sanskrit scholarly purposes of critical editions and things like that, a PDF image delivered in the correct page order is good enough. And that is one of the ways we are thinking of delivering the manuscripts. When somebody says, I want manuscript number 1945, we will take the images of 1945, turn them into a good 200 DPI printable size and deliver it to them. The reason why we want to store these images in high resolution is for posterity. You should not be touching images, touching manuscripts every day. And the one opportunity you get, it is important to get as good data as you can. We calculated we're going to need something like 2 to 3 petabytes of storage. And that is not a big, yeah, it is a big storage, but it is not a big problem because storage is getting cheaper by the day. And one of our goals is not to let this data leave India. So we've got to keep this data within India. And as Dr. Jha from NMM said, trusted data repositories and so on and so forth. Having a trusted data repository is one thing, but being able to deliver the data from that trusted repositories is to me more important. If scholars don't get hold of the manuscript easily and spend 5 years, 6 years, 7 years just looking for manuscripts, then what is the point? The fifth question you had was about catalog metadata and how it translates to other standard forms. Well, at the start of the project, we came to this conclusion that no pre-existing technique allows everything, all the complexity of a manuscript to be captured in terms of things like MARC and Dewey Decimal and all the other known, well-known library systems. We vetted this out by talking to people in, for instance, Bhandarkar Institute, who've done remarkable work on manuscripting of, on cataloging of manuscripts. And they too had come to the same conclusion. So we said, well, we've got to invent our own, but let us invent something from which we can export to any format that is needed. And that's basically what we've got. What we're using is standard Mongo databases, which are ideal for storage of textual information. And from there, we can map the various fields into a variety of things. One rule we have, and you will have noticed this from the couple of examples we've shown, is no field is left blank. It can be called agyat, it can be called anuplabd, it can be called whatever, but no field is ever left blank. So we don't really have that problem. And your last question was search. Well, obviously search will evolve. The way we've planned it, you can come into the search engine, into the catalog via any of the Romanizations of Sanskrit or via Devanagari. If you say come in on SLP, the results will be shown to you on SLP. That's standard pre-existing technology. You saw some of that in the NCC referencing work also, where we went from IAST, diacritical mark Romanization, to Devanagari search. So that's, and it's quick and it's fairly effective. So that's our starting point. Now, whether we go to image search and things like that, one's got to think in terms of the user rather than, so I hope that covers some of the points. Dr. Amba Kulkarni. Good afternoon, madam. Long time after I'm seeing you.
Namaste, sir. Namaste.
Namaste.
Yes. So, first of all, I should thank you for excellent presentation. I'm really impressed on all the 4 fronts The management, of course, you are good at. The development and production, again, which is your own area. And also the research that you have done in this. Because after we met, this is, I think, some 2 years ago, when you had described, we had several meetings and you had then in one of the meetings described the whole plan and all. So after that, now I am seeing the actual product. Though I had some discussions with some of your persons who you have engaged, but still today I really got a very good picture of what all you are doing. I won't take much time. Just two things I want to say, because I'm not an expert in manuscriptology. Manuscripts is not my cup of tea. So, but two suggestions I had. One is you were talking about the lexicon. There is one lexicon by name Pandit Database by Egil Bronner of Hebrew University. And it is available online under GPL or whatever free license, maybe Creative Commons license. And it has more than 7,000 entries as of now of persons, places, and all these. So maybe you can have a look at that so that you can import those directly. You need not have to type in the things. Maybe, of course, the pattern might be, the fields, etc., might be different. You may have to do some adjustments at some import facility you need to look at. Then I also was intrigued by this Grantha. There are some manuscripts in Grantha script. So when I thought over this, when you are going to put this in your system, you will need a support for Grantha script. That is one part which, from the technology point of view. And of course, necessarily, you will also be doing it in Devanagari. So ultimately, you will be developing Grantha to Devanagari kind of transliteration scheme. So this may involve some research, but this is something which I'm really looking forward to, because there are several Grantha script manuscripts. And then once you have this technology, you can extend it to Sharda and other scripts. So these are just two things, two suggestions I have. And thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Amma
for
Madam.
inviting me.
I must acknowledge the encouragement you gave us at the very start. I mean, you have been involved even before this baby was born. So thank you so much. And I take both of your points are extremely valid. We will look at the Pandit database. I think we'll end up with a lexicon of people, which will be about 40 to 50,000, and a lexicon of titles, which will be about 110,000. By the time we get to 2.5 lakhs, that is the size our lexicons will be. But given the technology we're putting behind it, I think it shouldn't be too hard. Professor Dash also wanted to say something. So if he wants to unmute himself.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
I have something very, I don't know where we stand today. There are different projects are going on all over the world, but all based on NCC. But though many of the data which are captured in the NCC, as you know, are not 100%. Because many of the libraries, even in India, have not completed their cataloging of the manuscripts. Whatever is published only, it is accessible to us. Whatever we give in NCC only based on the printed catalogs. And those who do not have catalogs at all, they have provided some 300 lists are there with us. If you look at this, the adequacy or the complete exhaustiveness of the data that we have today is very meager for us because we don't have exact picture. You have planned for 25 lakhs manuscripts. What are the resources from where you are planned? Second is, as Kulkarni, our Amba Kulkarni pointed out, the Sanskrit manuscripts are available in different Indian scripts. Okay, even in Odisha, we have Odia scripts. Here you have Grantha script. If you go to Malayalam, Kerala, you have Malayalam script, Telugu scripts. Most of the manuscripts in South India are in all over India in the different scripts. Now, second, my point is how we come together to have a basic idea of that this much we have in our tradition, our heritage. The manuscript heritage is totally sampled. There is no exact figure. Different people claim differently. There is no uniformity. And there is also no, as you said, you have quality check. What kind of quality we can check? As he mentioned, now Pandit project, they have started something. Though they asked us, we could not join. And because we have some restrictions, we have our own commitments. See, how do you check them? There is the lexicon that you are going to prepare or that you have planned. How you are going to check it? The informations are already given in the NCC. You have automated NCC data. Okay, so most of your informations are from NCC. But as I told you, the NCC data may be 70% or 60% of the total manuscripts available in the world. But the rest of the manuscripts are not catalogued nor updated. So, and when you are taking now, suppose from Vaidik Sanshothan Mandal, the Vaidik VSM catalogs were included only from volume 15. When I came to know this, volume 15 we started, when it's in my time. So from 15 onwards, we have taken up this BSM catalog, even Rory catalog. Now, when you are taking Panchadasi, I don't know whether Panchadasi has been included. So now, in NCC, we have one set of references. Now we're adding one library, suppose. How does one go to, like that, there will be different libraries. Now, Panchadasi has been completed long back. How we are going to, are you planning to update the data that is found in, because NCC is just a base, as you said, it is a platform. You have to update it. If you have to update, then you will have a set of work that you need, or a team, whatever you form, that the informations available before 15. Now there are hundreds of catalogs which are not included in 14, but from 15 we have tried to accommodate and update maximum possible. That is from Brahma Sutra onwards. Before that, they are remaining. So now one thing is how we are going to, it is not only for your project or NCC or anything, how we will provide the complete data of our manuscript heritage of India.
I think, look, nobody has the complete data. I don't think.
That's what, how you are going to, and I will give one my experience. Now you have taken from Bhandarkar or say Vaidik Sanshothan Mandal. I don't know on how you apply this data that they have given. Is it digitized by the NMM or by themselves? I don't know.
Digitized by us.
By yourself, you have digitized. Now, these were also digitized earlier by the NMM. They have done digitization of many libraries. Why not use that, suppose, so that it will reduce your time, then you can give more concentration on the cataloging. How we can bring out the good catalogs.
So I was talking about digitization of their catalogs. We have done the digitization of their catalogs and their accession. Can I respond because there are other people waiting to talk?
One more information I will give you.
Yeah.
In Deccan College, there are 11,000 manuscripts. They have scanned it, but not catalogued.
Yeah, I'm aware of
it. I saw it. So all these things, if you take, that will give a whole picture we should
so, look, I've done a paper on the NCC, which has been accepted at the World Sanskrit Conference, and taking the NCC as it is and where it is going and how it is going to be useful. It is definitely not a complete reference source, but it is a very, very good starting point. So to us, because we're looking for a starting point, that's a very good one. The other thing which the NCC does is it brings together a very good bibliography of source bibliography. So that again gives us pointers to where one can go to find information. And thankfully, roughly 75% of the bibliography that is in the NCC is also digitally available in archive.org. So we have access to that sort of stuff. So the research we do is really based, starting point is NCC, but there's a whole lot of other referencing. We are not looking for information on which manuscript is in which library, which is one of the key reasons why the NCC exists. We are looking for, if this person is Vidyaranya, which Vidyaranya is it? Is it somebody whose guru was this and father was this? And there the NCC is actually very, very good. Coming to the coverage of Vedic Sanshodhan Mandal catalog in the NCC, even after volume 15 and the entries, again, this is going to be a part of the paper which we are writing for the World Sanskrit Conference, the coverage is highly variable. So for instance, on a topic, or the Vedic Sanshodhan Mandal has 16 manuscripts, only 4 are covered by the NCC. So yes, there are gaps there, but that's not our point of interest. Our point of interest is, who is this Vidyaranya? So, and of course, there is room for us to work with NMM, there is room for us to work with IGNCA, there is room for us to work with a whole raft of other people who have already done this work. The reason why I haven't approached them is because I can't be sure whether what we have done is the right thing to do. And it is for the first time we are showing it to various scholars. My view is that given the resources we can bring to bear, I mean, I'm talking of 10 to 12 crore rupees a year, for the NMM and the IGNCA to get that kind of budget for this kind of work is probably never going to happen. I was talking to Dr. Deepthi Tripathi in Vancouver 2 years ago, and she said, "Bhai, मुझे 5 करोड़ रुपए की जरूरत थी, वो 5 करोड़ रुपए नहीं मिले तो हम इस काम को नहीं कर पाए." Okay, if it couldn't be done then, can we do it now? And we can work in public-private partnership. I don't have an issue with that. The point is, we are developing certain systems and certain expertise and certain operating procedures, and we want to cover as many as we want. So if between IGNC and NMM, there are something like 5 million images available, I mean 5 million manuscripts imaged, great. We can just pick them up and do their descriptive catalogs. And that will save us the whole object of imaging. Dr. Malar Kulkarni, if he's still with us, he wanted to speak something and he's been waiting for a very long time.
I'm not able to see him.
Okay, I think he has left. He has left.
Okay, Malar Kulkarni is left. Anybody else got any thoughts, any questions, any comments?
Sir, for this subject classification, you can very well follow the Deccan College dictionary.
Sir, that dictionary is far from, it is only still in, I think,
No. I'm telling subject classification.
Oh, subject classification.
Are
Okay.
given in the, and we have also followed in NCC. I have also followed. Because
we looked at the subject classification of the NCC, Dr. Dash, and one of the problems again is there are too few subjects. There is a total of something like 35 subjects.
Where?
In the NCC.
Huh.
So, and if you're looking for 25 lakh catalogs on average, say suppose there were 50 subjects, then you will end up with 50,000 hits. And therefore you need a reasonably large number. And that's the reason why we've gone to our subject lexicon is something like 260, 290 entries. I forget that. But I forget how many, but we have, one has to think of the number of hits one would get. If one just, Jyotish is the top level subject at the NCC, but within Jyotish, there are so many other things like Hora and, lots of Muhurt and all that. So one has to think from the user's perspective. So we did look at a lot of proposals. I mean, Peter Schaff made a proposal. Revati Deshmukh made a proposal. Revati Deshmukh's book, in fact, has subject classifications of something like 8 or 9 different libraries. The problem is volume. The problem is 2.5 million. If it were 15, 16, 20,000, no issue at all. But as soon as you go to 25 lakhs, it becomes a big issue. So you need to begin with a subject, but then how do you narrow it down? Ganit is all right, but are you looking at geometry, or are you looking at algebra, or are you looking at arithmetic? You need to think of that too. Dr. Pataskar.
Yes, sir. Namaskar, thank you very much. Sir, I had one query. When we had the seminar in Vedic Sanchodhan Mandal, that time we had one problem. That when one accession number is given to several kritis, and that time this problem was not solved. How have you solved this problem? For example, in one mandal, for example, there is Bhagavad Gita, Bhishma Stavaraj and Vishnu Sahasranam. And it's not that they are separately bound. At the backside of the Gita, the Vishnu Sahasranam starts. Somewhere in on the same page where the Vishnu Sahasranam ends, Bhishma Stavaraj starts. So we have given same accession number to these 3 krutis.
Correct.
And at present, I'm practically facing this problem because I am working on one parishishta, which is one of the part of Ashtadasha parishishtas of Shukla Yajurveda. So how have you solved this problem?
This is a very common occurrence where one accession number may have more than one granth. And the converse problem is also true, where one granth has more than one accession number. Both these things are to be found. So when it is more than one granth, when we are giving the title, we give all 3 titles. Bhishma Stavaraj, Vishnu Sahasranam, Gajendra Moksha, say if those were the 3. And because all of 3 of them relate to the Mahabharata, then that linkage can be established. And when it comes to the keywords, all the associated keywords like Vishnu Sahasranam is also a Strotra and a Stuti, all that sort of stuff can also then be linked. So the system already accommodates these kind of complexities. This is what I said, take Panchadashi for instance. Ramakrishna's commentary on Panchadashi, for something like 7 chapters, he's got 7 titles. And for the other 8 chapters, he's got the commentary under 1 title. So, Mool text is 1. The commentary is also 1, but it has got 8 different titles. So this complexity has to be handled. And the system that we've got of given title rather than the title which is on the manuscript and keywords helps with this. So, if we were able to sit together, I could show it to you in great detail. Something I've been wanting to do, but I haven't been able to do. But
thank you.
It is a complicated problem. But as I said, my life is spent in looking at all these complicated things and making them simple. Because if I don't make it simple, then I cannot train people.
Yes.
I cannot train people. And if I cannot train people, then I will never achieve my goal. So I have to be able to keep things simple and still solve the problem.
And one more query, sir. Are you considering the manuscripts which are available on internet? For example, the Raghunatha Library gives all their manuscripts on internet.
Yes, we will. Again, I'll be working with people like E. Gangotri, Chetan Pandey, who's doing a lot of work on scanning of manuscripts. Many libraries have put their collections on the internet. As soon as I have the capacity to add more work, and at the moment I don't, I'm limited by the number of catalogers I have. And this is where I make my request to everybody who's attending this meeting. Please, 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 we pay people well. We look after them well. ask them to apply to us and join this. It's very, very interesting work. You know, we'd love to, as I said, I want to grow this team and I'm not being able to grow this team. Okay, can we get back to gallery view? Okay, if there is no further comments, then I think bring back to Spotlight. Okay. All that remains for me is to say to all our attendees and guests, thank you very much for spending your time with us. We, at the end of this session, as I said at the start of the session, we're recording this, and we will publish this on YouTube in due course of time. So you can spread it around, but I'll send you the links. And if anybody is interested in a copy of my slide deck, please ask me. I will send the slide deck out to you as well. Thank you very much for your time. And from what I have heard, I get a positive vibe in terms of what we're doing, we should continue to do. But there is similarly at the same time the need to widen our collaborative reach with the likes of the NMM and the IGNCA. And that's something which I will definitely want to do. So thank you very much for your time, and namaskar.